Welcome to my review of Masters of Doom by David Kushner. Now this is a book about the guys that made Doom, or ID Software, or id Software as it's supposed to be called. I always called it ID Software, but apparently it's id Software. Now they're still going, well, the company's still going. The main guys that started the company have all left the company. And this isn't about Doom, the game that came out in 2016. This is about the original Doom that came out in the early 90s, I think 1993. And if you're wondering what this pixelated mess behind me is, this is actually Doom from the early 90s. And you might be looking at this thinking, what's all the fuss about? You know, why is it worth writing a book about the guys that made this? But this game was actually revolutionary for the time. Patch. Oh dear. It's my cat Patch, sorry about that. So he's just going to lie there, okay. I think he's off camera, okay, we can't see him. That's okay. You just take it easy, Patch. It's very hot today. Okay. Right, so where was I? Yeah. Now, Doom was groundbreaking for the time. If you wanted the best game technology, id Software, they were the company. They even upped their game after Doom with Quake, which is like full 3D. And before Doom, there was a game called Wolfenstein 3D that they did. John Carmack, who was the main coder, he worked wonders. He was like a coder whiz. And in the early 90s, he was a bit of an idol of mine. Like, he was like a magician when it came to coding. In the early 90s, I was actually working for my father. And we were doing CAD work. So I actually had some high-end PCs that I could play Doom on. At that stage, I was older, like I was a young adult, early 20s. I wanted more mature games to play. And so did a lot of the guys that grew up in the 80s like myself. The games were really perceived to be for younger kids. Those playing Mario and Sonic. And Doom just hit the spot. It was like the perfect storm. It was just like the right game at the right time. And it was a phenomenon. Like everybody was playing it. I was even playing it at lunch at work. And I worked with a guy called Terry. He worked for my dad as well, and he was into computers, and we got on really well. And I think it was actually Terry that brought in the shareware version of Doom, and we put it on the PCs, and that was it. And my dad saw it, and even my dad, who's not a gamer, he was playing it as well. Like at lunchtimes, we would bolt across the road, go to the local bakery, get some rolls, straight back to our computers, and we'd sit there eating the rolls, crumbs all over the keyboards, playing Doom, and it's like nothing I'd ever played before. Demons would come at you and you'd have a chainsaw, you'd be hacking your way through these demons, and it was really the birth of first-person shooters. If you grew up playing Call of Duty, Halo, Battlefield, those games, their DNA really is in Doom. Like, that's where it all started. And in the book they do actually talk about the ID guys and when they made Doom, and they realised that they had something a bit special and people were going to love it, and a lot of people would probably lose a lot of work time at work playing it on their PCs, and they were spot on, because that's exactly what happened to me. I actually bought my first PC to play Doom, really. That was one of the main reasons I bought it. And I actually still have my copies of Quake, which is the game that id made, or id made after Doom. And here's Quake 1. This was actually a full 3D game, and again behind me here you can see what it looked like. Again, another pixelated mess by today's standards, but in the early 90s there weren't 3D graphics cards that we know today. The processing unit did everything. Every pixel on the screen was being put there by the central processing unit. There was no GPU graphics processing unit to do that for you. So the processor had to do all the game logic and print all the graphics and do all the raster effects and all the trickery that John Carmack from id got it to do. Today, processors run at gigahertz, like you can have 2 or 3 or 4 gigahertz processors. Back in the early 90s, I had quite a fast PC, and it was a 486 DX2, and it ran at 66 megahertz. That's all it ran, at 66 megahertz. And there were video cards, but they didn't have any hardware acceleration. They were literally just chunks of video RAM. You had different modes, different resolutions, different colour palettes or colour depth, but that was about it. And when John Carmack coded the engine for Doom, he used the VGA mode, which had 256 colours per pixel. So he figured out that he could use that extended colour palette to have gradiated colours. So as you looked away into the distance in the different rooms, they would get darker. And John Romero could see the potential of what Carmack had done. Like, he saw that, oh wait a minute, we could have rooms with flickering lights to make it even more atmospheric. We could have rooms where the lights go out and then all monsters spawn behind the players. It was a common theme actually within the book, where John Carmack would come up with a cool programming idea and a cool game engine, and then Romero would then have all sort of ideas what they could do with it to make great games. Now in the book, it's not just about the games, it really is about the people behind them, so that it goes into the sort of different personalities of Carmack and Romero and Tom Hall and Adrian Carmack as well. Now Adrian, you might think, Adrian Carmack, he's the guy that did the graphics, and he does some really fantastic work, and you might think that he's maybe brothers with John Carmack, but I thought they were brothers, but it turns out in the book that's just a coincidence. They're not brothers at all. And there's always little bits of information in the book that kind of enlighten you. I thought I knew a lot about id Software and the guys behind it, and then I read the book, and there's just so much more information in here than I ever even dreamed that there would be in here. David Kushner, you can tell this is really a passion project for him. He's really gone to town on this, interviewing loads of people, quoting them in the books. You might think, they're just like a bunch of young guys, like geeks, like as soon as they made any money they went and bought Ferraris, and young guys that are successful can get a bit egotistical, and they're into like computers and going to be geeky. Is the book going to be enjoyable to read? But it is. I mean, there's lots of interesting stuff in here about the dynamics within the group, and of course the dealings they had with different software companies as they become more successful, and how eventually the things that the games that made them so successful kind of tore them apart eventually. This book was published in 2003, so it only really goes up to Quake 2. So it doesn't cover Rage. I was really impressed by the game engine. I actually enjoyed Rage quite a lot. And Rage 2 is out at the moment. It hasn't got great reviews, but I will pick it up eventually. And of course Doom Eternal, that's on the horizons, but none of that's in the book. Obviously, as I say, it finishes about Quake 2. And I did know about John Romero leaving after Quake. He said that he left to start Ironstorm, which is a company that made a game called Daikatana. And I remember at the time thinking, that doesn't look very good, and it didn't turn out to be very good. But in the book, you actually find out that they were going to get rid of Romero. It wasn't just Romero wanting to leave, although he does say that that's what he wanted to do. It turns out that John Carmack had basically thought he wasn't pulling his weight anymore. And like programmers do, like programmers are a certain type of people. I've worked as programmers, I've worked as a programmer, and they're a certain type of person. And even like in the book, John Carmack says in the book that, stick him in a dark room with a computer, some Diet Coke and a supply of pizza, and he'd be happy as Larry, just coding. And that's what he wanted to do. He just wanted to code. Whereas John Romero, he was more a flamboyant character, or is a more flamboyant character, and he wanted to enjoy the fame of the success of Doom, and he enjoyed going out and people recognising him, and he had big plans for id Software and future games. But John Carmack, he just wanted to program. He wanted to keep the company small, that he could control it, and it would be more efficient and streamlined. That's the way coders are, And he was actually referred to by the other guys as the machine. Like Tom Hall and John Romero, they was always goofing around, messing about, and that kind of annoyed John Carmack. He just wanted to get on with work, and it even annoyed the graphic artist Adrian Carmack as well. It started to annoy him, and so there was divisions there. And eventually, as I say, Romero left and he made to form Ironstorm. And I did know about that, but I didn't know that John Carmack actually prepared Romero's resignation. Like, they just called him into the office, him and the other guys just called him into the office, and they said to him, we don't think you're pulling your weight. Here's your resignation, sign it and go, And it says in the book that it was actually a relief for Carmack for him to finally leave. And it's kind of, after all they went through, you know, and then it ends up like that, you know, like just the breaking up and doing their own things. And it's kind of sad, but, you know, but you have to move on, you know. But I think that's the thing. Fame changes people, and the egos creep in, and, you know, nothing lasts forever, you know. People move on and they have different ideas about what they want to do, and that definitely comes across in the book. Now, as I say, in the early 90s, I was doing coding. I learned assembly language and I was coding, so I had kind of more of a deeper sort of respect for John Carmack, what he achieved with games like Doom and Quake, and it was nothing short of miraculous what he got those machines to do back in those times. And a lot of games were inspired by Doom, and they used the Doom technology, and they call them like Doom clones. We now refer to them as first-person shooters. Now they say you should not meet your heroes, you know, because you might not actually like them. So when I was reading this book, I was a bit concerned how John Carmack would come across. You know, would I actually think he was okay? But I did actually warm to the guy, because it turns out he had a cat called Mitzi, and she used to lay on top of his monitor when he was coding. And I kind of thought, well, that's nice, you know. Obviously, he's got a bit more of a humane side to him, you know, if he's got a pet, right? But a bit later on, I was with Patch is back. Okay, now you might not like this story, Patch. So, but yeah, a bit later on in the book, it turns out that Carmack had taken Mitzi to the cat shelter. He got rid of her, and oh, why did you do that? You know, I was just liking you, and then you went and done that, you know. And John Romero said to him, you know, like, well, she doesn't find a home, you know what's going to happen to her. And apparently Carmack said that this is such a typical programmer type thing to say. He said that the negatives outweighed the positives. So he just got rid of her. And he just shrugged his shoulders and walked off. And I was like, ugh. And I know it does say in the book that she wasn't a happy cat. Like, she was attacking people in the office, and she wasn't house trained. She was weeing where she shouldn't. And apparently she did wee on the new sofa that they brought. But still, I was like... But then I thought to myself, well, he's in his 20s, right? So, you know, if you live long enough to look back on your 20s, there's going to be things you're going to have regrets. Like, there's going to be things you wish you hadn't done. So I hope he regrets doing that. I couldn't imagine I would take him back to the cat shelter. No, I'd never do it. Never. Don't worry, Patch, you're okay. It's okay. But anyway, at the end of the book, I did think about that. I was like, I just hope Mitzi's okay. I hope she found, well, it's a long time ago, but I hope she found a nice home and was well looked after, because she obviously wasn't happy as the id office cat. And there are some other cool stories in the book as well. Like when they all worked for Soft Disk, they didn't have the PCs to do the games they wanted to do. There was moonlighting doing games. They didn't have the PCs, so they backed up their cars to the Soft Disk office and loaded up all the Soft Disk PC computers, and it took them back to where they were staying and coded over the weekend. So they coded their own games over the weekend, and then took the computers back before the next working week started. I mean, how cheeky is that? But anyway, yeah, I really enjoyed the book. I thoroughly recommend it. It was a really good read. If you're not into id Software, if you weren't really into Doom, then it's still probably worth a read, even if it's just as a snapshot of what the industry was like in the early 90s. Okay, so I hope you've enjoyed the review, and I'll see you in the next video. Thank you, and goodbye.